Hi.
Hi, it's nice to be here, Pia.
It's nice to have you here. Opening night. I mean, you've authored over 20 plays. Does opening night, is it still like stressful or does it get easier?
I guess, yeah, I mean, stress is one word. It wouldn't be the word I would use. It's kind of expectation of like, well, what's going to happen. And you never know. You never know whether actors are going to forget their lines or you're going to be charmed or appalled. And I went to the opening night the other night and I was charmed rather than appalled, which was great.
So you don't fear failure. It's always like this great adventure opening
I
night.
expect failure, and I'm often I get it.
What do you mean by that?
It takes a lot of failure to succeed now and then.
So you got to have some to get some really gems out of it.
Yeah, well, everybody has a lot of bad writing to do. Who's a writer to get to the good writing?
Okay, so this A Woman is a Secret, it's about six plays really kind of embedded into one long narrative. Not long in a bad way, narrative, but each play kind of focuses on different aspects of the power struggles that exist between the sexes at different stations in our life. Love is a topic, is an emotion that we all deal with. It's not something we often, I think, put a lot of stock into that dynamic relationship that we have with one another. So why'd you want to explore these themes? I mean, what initially drew you to this theme specifically when it comes to romance?
Well, I wanted to understand women because I was dealing with women a lot, and if
You'll
I
never
could,
understand us.
and I'll never understand. That's why the title of the play is "A Woman Is a Secret." But in the attempt to understand women, you might be able to sort of understand men, and if I can understand men, maybe I could understand myself and get somewhere in my life. It's the relationship between men and women is the most complex and rich territory I know how to mine, and it's something I've thought about all my life.
Well, as you mine this stuff, I mean, thinking back to your own life, are there moments, are there things that leap into your head about that power struggle, that dynamic that really hit home for you?
Well, I guess I don't really think of it as a power struggle so much as a negotiation between two parties who don't know exactly the contract they're trying to forge. One of the things that happens with people is if they enter into a romantic relationship, it's based on some kind of tacit agreement. But they continue to grow and change, and so the agreement constantly has to be renegotiated. And a lot of times people don't know that they're supposed to do that, and they like, I signed on for this deal, and now you're changing the deal, and they feel betrayed. But if you can sort of stay loose and have an improvisatory energy with your partner, you might be able to get somewhere.
Have you been good at doing that?
No, I've been kind of a disaster.
Me too.
I've been married a couple of times and had some other big relationships, and I've put together a very interesting life so far, and I'm happy to say that all of the great questions I've had remain unanswered, so that the sort of narrative propulsion of living is very much still in force for me.
What kinds of questions are you throwing about?
Like, where am I going? What is my objective in life? Am I going to have a successful long-term relationship with somebody that's rich and makes sense? What am I going to write next? Am I going to write anything of particular merit again? All of that stuff is, just completely every day when I get up. That's all still very much alive.
And because I struggle with some of those same questions. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone does. Does thinking about them, does it bog you down?
Oh no, the opposite. I have basically kind of a optimistic nature, and I don't like to write plays or films that are simply descriptive. This is the way it is, and you got to live with it. I write more prescriptive stuff. It's like, well, this might be a solution, and that might be a solution, and in this particular bunch of plays, there's certainly a magical and a surreal quality. A lot of the plays have some form of magic in them, and which is my experience of life. And I think that you sort of need a little magic to get through the day. And every day I feel like I experience some.
And as you were watching this play, I mean, are the new things that you learn starting seeing being reflected back to you, that you're learning new things about our differences?
Right. Well, I mean, one of the things that's happening is I get to do something that a lot of people don't get to do, and that is I get to sit there and watch what's inside of my head across the way. And go like, oh look, that's what I was thinking. That's what I was talking about. That's what I was preoccupied with. And it's a kind of magical three-dimensional mirror where you get to take a look at yourself and where you were at, if not where you're still at, and have a reaction to that. We don't get to react to ourselves that much. We see ourselves in other people's eyes. We don't usually get to see ourselves head on, and that's an interesting thing to do.
And so on the weekend, what was reflected back to you about yourself?
There was a lot of sorrow and tranquility and open questions and a real hopefulness that there was a way to go forward. And I mean, I was raised with the idea that, I'd get married at 18 and I would be buried next to that person. And then, modern life hit me and it became a much more complicated story and maybe a more interesting story. I don't really feel like anything has particularly gone wrong. I just think that my life keeps turning out to be more interesting than I intended.
Last week you tweeted. You're a prolific tweeter. You say a lot in 140 characters. So you tweeted something that caught my attention. A lot of your tweets do. And you said, this was your tweet, the same thing that makes a rope bridge attractive makes it terrifying. Romance is like that too. And you explore that idea on stage. Your characters all seem to fear the future. So is that about loneliness, or is that about the fear of being alone?
Well, I think all of my characters are aware of the future. In other words, their own mortality and the limited amount of time you have to sort of make something of your life and to follow your impulses. We all contain a voice that tells us what to do, and we either follow that voice or we don't. And if you follow that voice, you're living out your fate, whatever it happens to be. And if you refuse to follow it, then I feel like you're going to have to come back and do it again. So I would much rather get as far as I can on this particular rope bridge than to wait for some future conveyance.
You talked about, for you, watching your own work on stage and the gift that really is to you in terms of learning. For we, the audience, as these issues are played out on stage, why do you think that helps us understand those issues differently, particularly if we've already had a real life experience with some of the same things?
Well, I mean, I think that I'm coming from a place that has a lot of overlap with other people's experience, but it might not be the same. Those differences can be maybe push you a little bit into thinking about things a little bit differently than you have. And certainly in everything that I do, there's a kind of gentle urging to be more courageous about living. Like, let's go ahead and make mistakes and live your life and let it be a mess and let it be a very interesting mess. And maybe ultimately will be like a beautiful Jackson Pollock.
I guess the risk of that is when we're, when we're making decisions, especially when it comes to romance, often there's this sort of finality in these decisions. So we can take the risk, but sometimes, we have made a decision, it's hard and fast, and there are consequences to that. So when it comes to your own life, do you think that you've gotten better at, making choices that have a little more, contemplation about them rather than sort of just making a decision on the fly as you sort of move on? Or is it always a struggle for you?
I mean, certainly, I know more about what the next day is going to be in terms of like if I have a romantic involvement, and I may look ahead to that next day and go like, I don't want that next day. So I'm not going to have this night. That's certainly come into the mix more for me as time has gone by. But I still like to take more chances than not. I guess I feel like I was born in the casino and I'm going to die in the casino.
What does that mean?
It means that there's a certain fatefulness and gambling that's going on in life, whether you want to deal with it or not.
Okay. I'll collect my chips. So we're talking about this. This play is really an exploration about women and men as individuals and more collectively. What have you learned about our differences?
I'm not sure I know. I mean,
You're no closer to figuring me out as a woman,
hell
right?
no. I do the best that I can, but I do know certain things that are probably true.
Like?
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of women have a real attraction for the idea of safety. And they want to feel, even though that's illusory, that they're safe in whatever way. And we all want to be accepted. That I think that that's a truth of men and women, but we're not necessarily willing to show who we are in order for that to be accepted. So a lot of women, for instance, know or think they know what a man is looking for from them, and they give them that. But even if they are then loved, they know they are not loved because they haven't shown their true face in order to be loved. So they feel perpetually robbed of the possibility of love, basically by their own pretense. And men have their version of that as well.
Well, we'll talk about the man's version of that in a sec. But you really think, I mean, initially that what you say is probably true of a lot of people, but you don't think we sort of peel back our layers and lift the veil, so to speak?
Yeah, it depends on the person. But I think that it's very hard for a lot of people to completely put down their defenses and say, this is who I am, and you can take me or leave me. I think there's more people like that in Canada than there is in New York City.
Why?
Well, I think that New York brings out a defensiveness because it is basically a combat situation. And it's very hard to find a place to sort of be soft and vulnerable. You might be real, but real in a battle is different than real in a cocktail lounge. And New York has just a very assaultive, experiential thing going on.
Okay. What'd you learn about guys?
Well, I mean, I disliked men for many, many years because I was grew up in a very butch neighborhood, and I went to a private school that was all boys, and I was in the Marine Corps with all guys for another couple of years, and by the time that was over, I never wanted to smell another athletic sock again, and I just found my conversation with men to be very limiting. And, because they wanted to talk about mechanics, or they wanted to talk about sports, or they didn't want to talk about anything much. That was had the driving route that they chose to get there. And all of that stuff just didn't interest me. And so I would much rather talk to women. And it was only after I turned 50 that I started to really enjoy the company of men and meet some guys who were very interesting and I could have profound conversations with.
I'm speaking with John Patrick Shanley, playwright, screenwriter, award-winning in all those facets. You talked earlier about, taking risks and taking life as it comes. And we've all made decisions at one time or another that we regret. You have said, though, he chuckles, you said you try to avoid making those kinds of decisions, at least the kinds of decisions that you might regret on your deathbed. So what responsibility do we have once we realize a mistake?
Can you make a mistake? Well, I mean, I guess obviously the answer is yes. But in a way, I find it more useful not to think that way. I feel like we're all geniuses at living our lives, or at least that's an interesting way to stop and think about things, and that, in fact, every move we make is brilliant and not necessarily understandable by anybody else or even ourselves. But this is like the best we can do with this particular life that we've been given. And whereas that is actually not true, it's not a bad way to think about things because it removes regret and it continues to move you forward through life. And, you know, what you were referring to, I mean, I do use the idea of being on my deathbed. Like I'm on my deathbed. Somebody asks me, you know, do you want to go to the beach today? And I'll be like, do I want to go to the beach? Okay, I'm on my deathbed. And I look back and I think you should have gone to the beach or you shouldn't have gone to the beach. And I invariably think, well, I should go to the beach, you know, on my deathbed. So why didn't I go to the beach?
Right.
You know?
It's called living life to its fullest.
Well,
right?
it prompts me to make certain decisions that maybe might be, you know, less lethargic.
So we've been talking about this, I mean, in the context of your own life, but I want to apply it to your creative process. Is it the good life decisions, or the bad ones for that matter, that have been most useful for you as a writer and your creative process?
Well, I mean, inherent in your question is this idea of good decisions and bad decisions and consequences and stuff like that. And I think I've just kind of thrown all that over my shoulder, and I just have a different mythology for how I think about the days and nights, you know. I do believe that life is a dream, and that everything that we see is on some level a metaphor, an illusion. It's not, nobody actually sees what's going on. Nobody can understand what's actually going on the conscious level. Our consciousness is kind of limited and only catches up after years of careful thought. And that in our dreams, both waking and sleeping, we sometimes approach understanding what's going on around us and finding a way to live that actually cuts into the living tissue of life as opposed to coasting along on the edge of things. And that's, you know, that's sort of where I'm always sort of trying to drive the car back into that lane.
Do you sometimes like misfire and go into that lane?
Yeah, but I mean, in other words, I don't want to live. I'm not interested in a lot of regret. You know, certainly I try to be compassionate and thoughtful in my choices, so that I'm not hurting people and I'm not hurting myself. If I hurt anybody, I would rather hurt myself because I can deal with myself better than I can the pain of another.
You know, your work has been honored with all these prestigious awards, the Oscar, the Tony, a Pulitzer. Many would suggest that Mr. Shanley's cup is full. Is there anything still missing for you, something you want to accomplish?
Well, I mean, everything I've done was done by somebody else. That's who I was yesterday. And, you know, so I don't have any feeling of standing on past accomplishments. It's much more about what I'm doing right now and what I'm supposed to do next, and my very real concern that I won't be able to do it or that I won't be able to do it well enough. And so, you know, I work really hard to just do something of quality and then go to bed, you know?
Thank you. It felt like a nice therapy session. I appreciate
but who was in therapy?
I think I was, but thank you very much.